I've had several requests to cover the upcoming fight this weekend between Claressa Shields and Savannah Marshall. Well, I've actually already done a fight preview for this one. As you can see on screen right here, it was uploaded earlier on this year. Those of you who saw the original one, there's probably not much reason to stick around for this new one because I'll just be reiterating most of the same points I made in the original. But for those of you who didn't see the original, then I guess you should stick around. Now, as I said in this initial vid, there are reasons why I'm covering Claressa Shields versus Savannah Marshall when I skipped over many other fights, including Taylor Serrano. And it simply comes down to the fact that I didn't find those other fights particularly interesting to me personally, including Taylor Serrano. And two, they weren't that important, quite honestly, from my perspective. You see, there are certain fights that I'm not excited for on a personal level. Let's say Mayweather-Pacquiao. By the time Mayweather-Pacquiao rolled around, I wasn't up for it at all. In fact, I was more interested in watching AJ versus Dillian Whyte, and I caught a lot of flack for it at the time. You guys remember that? But I was justified in my preference for that fight in the end because it turned out to be far more exciting than Mayweather-Pacquiao. But I covered Mayweather-Pacquiao nevertheless, even though I wasn't really excited about it, because of the impact it had not only in the boxing world, but it was a crossover fight. So I felt compelled to cover it. Taylor Serrano was neither of those things. It didn't interest me on a personal level, nor was it a crossover fight, despite the best efforts of Matchroom and DAZN to bamboozle people into thinking otherwise. The purses that Taylor and Serrano were paid, only $1 million each. Now, for a fight that's supposed to be so impactful and the whole world apparently is clamoring to see it, why were they paid so little, relatively speaking? It doesn't make sense if it's what Matchroom and DAZN were making it out to be. It only makes sense when you realize that it never was that. To put it in perspective, Eddie Hearn offered Anthony Yarde £1 million, not $1 million like Katie Taylor got paid against Serrano, because pounds are still worth a bit more than dollars. No, he offered Anthony Yarde £1 million to fight Joshua Buatsi in a British title fight. Not some historic, undisputed fight for the ages like Taylor Serrano was supposed to be. No, just a British title fight. Offered him £1 million, more than Taylor got against Serrano in New York. Now, why could that be? Some people are scratching their heads. It's very simple. A fighter's purse is primarily determined by the demand to see them in a particular fight. And so Eddie Hearn thought clearly that there was a greater demand to see Anthony Yarde against Joshua Buatsi than there was to watch Katie Taylor fight Amanda Serrano. Why else would he offer Anthony Yarde more money than he paid Katie Taylor? What, you think that he was just feeling generous and wanted to give some money away to a fighter who he doesn't even promote? Grow a brain, people. Another metric by which we can measure the popularity or the significance of a fight is, of course, viewing figures. Now, Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano did something like 1.5 million viewers worldwide. And Matchroom and DAZN were trying to make out as though this figure was incredible, amazing. It's not incredible or amazing. Chris Eubank Jr. versus Nick Blackwell, another British title fight, did double that figure, 3 million viewers. And that wasn't any kind of historic event, was it? Wasn't that in a leisure center or something? 3 million viewers in the UK alone. And Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano did 1.5 worldwide. Do you know how many viewers AJ Klitschko got worldwide? I'll give you a second before I scroll down. Any guesses? Let me show you. Joshua Klitschko did between 4 and 500 million viewers worldwide. So Joshua Klitschko was a genuinely huge fight with a huge market, a huge audience. And Taylor Serrano was a niche fight for a niche audience. That's the truth. They comped loads of tickets, and the tickets that were sold were way below the normal price that you would get at Madison Square Garden for a ticket for a boxing show. And they obviously had a load of people coming from Ireland, which is where the vast majority of Katie Taylor's fans are from. And they made it look like it was something that it really wasn't. Now, if you're part of that niche market, good for you. If you enjoyed it, good for you. But I'm not part of that niche market. Respect that. Rather than getting upset about it, respect it. Now, I'm going to point something else out here. There's another thing, or there's several other things, which cause people to not really gravitate towards certain fights. Now, here we have the BoxRec rankings for the male middleweight division. You can see they've got Golovkin at the top. Now, if we go to the final page, you will see how many male middleweights there are in the world. There is 1,495. There's actually a bit more than that, because if I go to the previous page, you'll see that several people are ranked in that last position of 1,495. So let's justifiably round it up to at least 1,500 people. Okay, so that's the number of fighters there are in the men's middleweight division. Now, guess how many fighters there are in Claressa Shields and Savannah Marshall's middleweight division? Can you guess? I'll give you a few seconds to guess before I show you. There isn't more than one page, right? There's 21 fighters in the entire world in the division that Claressa Shields and Savannah Marshall are fighting in. So obviously, this is a much bigger talent pool. And you'll find the same throughout all the weight divisions, right? The equivalent with the men, there's way, way bigger talent pool. So would you expect a talent pool of 1,500 people to generally produce a better standard of fighter than a talent pool of just 21 people? We're not talking about amateur boxing here. We're talking about professional boxing. I'm asking you guys that question. All right. So that's one issue that people have with some of these fights, is the talent pool is very small, and therefore the competition isn't as fierce, the skill level isn't as high. And let's just have a look at some of the fighters in the division that Claressa Shields and Savannah Marshall were in. I mean, look at this. Loads of 1-0s, 3-0s. In the top 10, you've got people that are 3-1, 4-4-2, 2-1, 5-1, 1-0, 3-2-1, 9-8-3. That's the number 3 ranked person in the world. They're 9-8-3. You see the point I'm making here? So this is one of the issues that people have. The other issue is the lack of knockouts, because fans want knockouts. However, I still decided to cover Shields Marshall because it kind of breaks the mold a little bit with regards to what you normally get in these kind of fights. So first of all, you have an individual in Claressa Shields who to many people is an obnoxious character. She has quite a strong social media presence. She's made some outrageous statements over the years. She involves herself in all sorts of different conversations. And so she has a higher profile than her rivals and so on. Very high profile. And this is someone who gets a lot of, how can I describe it? Hate. There's a lot of people who just find her detestable and obnoxious. And as Muhammad Ali once said, to paraphrase him, there are people who come to my fights to see me win, and there are people who come to my fights to see me lose. But all of them still come. You know, doesn't matter whether they love me or hate me, as long as they come to the fight, it's all good. And so Claressa Shields, in that respect, is a promoter's dream. Yeah, there's a lot of people that can't stand her, but they feel something. She gets a response from the public. Boxing, in particular, likes a villain. And if Claressa Shields has to play that role, then that's good for the promotion. Now, the issue that Claressa Shields has had is that she hasn't had a rival that people have really believed in, or a rival that had any kind of serious following. And therefore, even though she's somewhat of a personality on social media, there hasn't been the kind of interest in her fights that she certainly would want. But with this fight, you've got Savannah Marshall, who breaks the mold in the sense that she has unusually heavy hands. She is a knockout puncher. In fact, she recently knocked out an opponent who had taken Claressa Shields the distance. So when you combine this obnoxious character in the eyes of many, who people want to see beaten and shut up and knocked out, when you combine that with arguably the biggest puncher in female boxing, you can see the potential that this fight has to actually cross over, to capture the imagination of people. So this is the reason I've decided to cover it, because again, it breaks the mold. And if it's promoted the right way, it could actually cross over to some extent. Now, it's not ideal for Ben Shalom. You know, the fact that this fight has been rescheduled several times, people have had to get refunds on their tickets. Maybe they lost money on hotels and train journeys and coach journeys and stuff like that. Will the same people who had to do all that decide to turn up for this fight? Maybe not, right? So that may impact how well it does at the gate. Also, the fight happening in the wake of this Conor Ben situation isn't good either. That's not ideal for the promotion, because boxing at the moment is being dragged through the mud. It's being seen in a bad light. And actually, Ben Shalom has spoken on this, I believe, in the past few days. He said that there's been some backlash. He's received backlash in terms of people canceling the tickets for this event just based on the Conor Ben situation, which is very unfortunate. So, yeah, it's not the ideal time to put the fight on, but it does have potential, not only to produce fireworks, you know, more so than these kind of fights normally would do, but again, to appeal to a wider audience, not just a niche market. Now, as far as how I think it's going to go, as much as Claressa Shields comes across as obnoxious, and even to me personally, she comes across as obnoxious, I can't allow that to cloud my judgment. I've been over it in my head a few times, and I suspect that Claressa Shields is going to win this fight on points. I could be wrong, but that's my suspicion. And one of the reasons that I say this is not just because of the fact that Claressa Shields is more experienced as a professional, but it's also due to her character. She's very strong-willed. Now, sometimes an extremely strong-willed person can be overconfident, and they can walk into a shot and they can be reckless. And I guess there's the potential for Claressa Shields to do that as well. But I suspect that won't happen. I suspect that she'll stick to her boxing and she'll show her level, and it will be maybe a cut above Savannah Marshall. So I suspect that the crowd won't get what they're looking for here with regards to the winner, because, you know, it's a fight in the UK and the vast majority of people in attendance will be hoping for Savannah Marshall to win. I'm sure Claressa Shields has got her fans I know she's got her fans in the United States, and they'll be tuning in with some interest. So that's my take on it. I'm expecting a Claressa Shields points victory. Let me know what you think is going to happen in the comment section below. Will Savannah Marshall be able to land the shots? You know, the thing about Marshall is she appears to be a good puncher, but as I've just showed you, there isn't really much in her division. And how will that power translate to someone like Claressa Shields? Also, as powerful as Savannah Marshall appears to be, she isn't that fast. She comes across as a little awkward in her movements and whatnot, and sometimes that can be an advantage, you know, because it can make a fighter more difficult to read. But I have to imagine that the speed gap here is going to be significant, that Claressa Shields will be able to take advantage of the lack of speed in Savannah Marshall. So that's my take on the fight. Look, if Marshall wins, I mean, it's no skin off my nose. You know what I mean? Maybe Claressa Shields, in the eyes of many, needs to be brought down a peg or two. But again, I can't allow Shields' obnoxious character to cloud my judgment. So that's the way I see the fight going. We'll find out what happens on the weekend. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below.